All right, let's dive into a story that's got Wall Street scratching its head. We're talking about Rezolve AI. This is a company that, on paper, seemed to do everything right, but then saw its stock get absolutely hammered for it. It's a real puzzle.
So here's the big question, the real mystery of it all. Why would a company announce what sounds like amazing news, only for investors to basically hit the panic button and sell? It's a classic Wall Street paradox, and we're going to try and unpack it together.
And boom, this is what that reaction looks like. A drop of over 14% on January 20th, 2026. That one number is pretty much the reason we're here today. It's our starting point. So, what on earth could make a stock fall that hard, that fast? Okay, that brings us right to our first piece of the puzzle. We're calling it the $250 million paradox. And yeah, it all starts with this huge chunk of cash that, weirdly enough, seemed to spook everyone. So here's the deal. Rezolve comes out and says they're raising $250 million, and they're doing it through what's called a direct offering, which basically means they're creating new shares out of thin air to sell. Now, this announcement comes right after they told the world they had their first ever profitable month. You'd think that's a 1-2 punch of great news, right? A company firing on all cylinders. But the market saw all those new shares and got worried that their own slice of the pie was about to get a whole lot smaller.
To really get what's going on here, you have to understand that there are two totally different stories being told about this company. It's like two sides of the same coin. So let's start with the good stuff, the bull case. This is the story of Rezolve as a trailblazer on the digital frontier. The core idea they're selling is something called agentic commerce. Now, what is that? Well, think about it this way. The AI isn't just a smart search bar. It's like having a personal shopping assistant that does everything for you, finding what you need even before you know you need it, and handling the entire checkout process. That's the huge game-changing promise Rezolve is built on. And this is the powerhouse engine they built to make it all happen. It's called the Brain Suite. At its core is their own LLM, the Brainpower LLM. And here's the kicker. They claim it has zero hallucinations. Why? Because it's only been fed a diet of commerce data. On top of that, they've been smart, snapping up key companies like Vizenze and Crownpeak. And they've teamed up with the big guns, Microsoft and Google, to scale this thing globally. And does it work? Well, look at this number. That tech has pulled in around 340 million unique users. I mean, let that sink in. That is a massive audience. It's a huge foundation to build on. And it's a cornerstone of the whole argument for why this company could be a giant. And they are not thinking small, not at all. Their target is $500 million in annual recurring revenue by the end of 2026. I mean, that is a huge, bold number. If they can hit that, they're not just a player, they're a force to be reckoned with.
And all of this comes together right here. It looks like Wall Street analysts are definitely drinking the Kool-Aid. They've stamped it with a strong buy rating, and their average price target is way up there, suggesting the stock could jump almost 175%. So there you have it. The bull case is pretty compelling, right? Revolutionary tech, massive user base, and gigantic financial goal. But, like I said, there are two sides to every story. So now we have to flip that coin over. Let's look at the bear case and ask the tough question. Is this digital frontier real, or is it just a financial mirage? And the very first thing the bears will point to is this. Oof, a net loss of over $217 million in just the last year. That means this company isn't just spending money, it is incinerating cash. And it actually gets worse. The company's shareholders' equity, which is just a fancy way of saying its net worth, was in the red, negative $14 million. So what does that mean? It means they owe more than they own. That is a huge red flag for any investor. And just to pile on, they've also taken on a big pile of debt. Remember that Crownpeak acquisition we talked about? Well, that came with a $150 million price tag in debt, added right on top of their already shaky finances. But this might be the real bombshell. A report came out from a short seller named Fuzzy Panda Research, and they made a pretty exclusive claim that Rezolve wasn't being straight about its revenue or even its AI tech. The allegation was that a big chunk of their money came from, get this, selling soccer tickets. Now, that's about as far from cutting-edge AI as you can get, and it attacks the very heart of what the company claims to be. So all of this leaves you, the investor, standing at a crossroads. You've got two completely different, totally contradictory stories about the exact same company. What do you do?
And this slide just lays it all out, side by side. In one corner, you've got the promise. This amazing AI, a $500 million goal, hundreds of millions of users, and analysts cheering it on. But in the other corner, you have the peril, crushing losses, being technically broke, drowning in debt, those really ugly allegations, and the fact that they're watering down their stock. It's a lot. So which story do you believe?
Right, that is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? So for our last section here, let's try to look into the crystal ball. Let's talk about what could happen next and what you really need to be watching for. Okay, so there are a few ways you could look at this. In the very short term, you might be a trader just looking for a quick bounce after that big drop. Zooming out a bit, for the midterm, all eyes are on that analyst target of over $10, but that's going to depend on a really solid earnings report. And then there's the long game. If you're a true believer, you're waiting for them to actually become profitable, with some folks dreaming of a stock price way, way up there. So if you're watching this story unfold, here's what you need to put on your calendar. The big one is the Q1 earnings report, expected around April 23rd. That is everything. You need to see if they're actually making progress toward that $500 million revenue goal. You need to see a clear plan to stop bleeding money. And honestly, it would be great to see them finally address those fuzzy panda allegations head on. Which really leaves us with one last, big, thought-provoking question. The entire sales pitch for Rezolve AI is built on this promise of zero hallucinations, an AI that gives you nothing but the truth. The irony is, the market is now wondering if the company itself can avoid creating hallucinations in its own financial statements. Can the promise of their technology be reflected in the reality of their books? I guess only time will tell.